Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. My name is Diana Sanchez, and I'm here with the TCU Alumni Association. And Hallie Crawford is here, certified career coach and founder of Create Your Career Path. And she will talk to us about how to know when it's time to go. Hallie, do you want to give a little background about yourself?
As well. Okay, cool. And I love the countdown that we just did. I feel like I'm on the Oscars or something. So let's go ahead and we'll get started and we'll do a little bit of housekeeping, etc., to allow other people to hop on because I know a lot of people are kind of going back to back with their meetings. So I'm really excited to be here with TCU today. I've been partnered um, with your alma mater for maybe 5+ years. I'm not sure how long it's been, but it's been a long time. And we are going to be talking today about how to know when it's time to go, when it's time to leave your job, leave your career or your industry or your profession. And this is a really big question that we get from a lot of our clients because sometimes, and it's understandable, to feel like, gosh, would it be better somewhere else or not really? Like, how am I supposed to know? Is the grass always greener on the other side or not necessarily? Or, for example, is this just a passing phase or something I need to get through in terms of my career and my professional life? So the how to know when it's time to go is how to know if it's time for us to make a move or a change or a shift, career-wise, company-wise, otherwise, whether it's now or later on. And we're going to focus on the advice that we give is going to help you make that decision, regardless of whether it's making a change now, later, or a dramatic change or not. So by way of quick introduction, my name's Hallie Crawford. I am a certified career coach, speaker, and author. My company is based in Atlanta, Georgia, but we have coaches in different parts of the country that provide our one-on-one individual coaching. I've been coaching and training since 2002. So it's been a long time. My gray hair is starting to show up more up here. Unfortunately, it used to be down below where you couldn't see it underneath as much, but c'est la vie. My undergraduate degree is from Vanderbilt University, and I have a master's degree from the University of Illinois. And the advice that I'm going to give you all today is advice that we give to all of our clients to help them figure out, is it time to make a move, change, or shift? What does that look like for them? And how do you evaluate if this is the right time to do so and what you need to do? Because it can be really overwhelming and confusing. And we don't want you to feel overwhelmed with our advice today. I like to give a lot of helpful advice during these webinars. And one of the things I would recommend up front is that as you're listening in, remember that you will receive a copy of the recording from today. And we are happy to give you a copy of our slides as well. And there will be a QR code in just a few minutes here, but also or locate the chat box for me if you would, because I just put a link to get the slides there as well. And I would pick one thing that makes the most sense for you and your situation, where you're at with this figuring things out. And one thing you'll do in the next week so that you forward the action. I don't know about you all, but I attend webinars like this or classes or workshops, whatever it is. And it's easy to like be all jazzed and motivated and excited right afterwards. And then life gets in the way. And I totally get that. So pick one thing, write it down for yourself. Please feel free to share it in the chat as we go because that helps with accountability. And then remember, you can revisit the recording as well as the slides later. So locate the chat because we are going to put some resources in there too. So let's talk first for a second about why this is a big topic for us and why it's so important for people to know what they need to do next. So first of all, if we look at the left-hand side, all the changes in the workplace in the past many years with working hybrid, remote, and then being brought back to the office. Some people loved that. Some people didn't love it. and it impacts our success and fulfillment at work and knowing if this is the right place for us to be. Then when you layer on technology and AI and how that is not just changing the workplace, but also different industries and roles that we have, it can make you rethink, is this what I want to be doing in the long run? And then when we look at the middle of this slide, changes in your industry related to technology and other things. But then when we think about the economy, and obviously there's been a lot of layoffs and so much upheaval this year specifically, a lot of people are wondering and trying to rethink, am I in the right place? And one of the things that we would recommend that you do first is actually on the right-hand side of this slide. We want you to be considering, how long have I felt this way before you make a decision? Because our goal for you is not for you to just have a knee-jerk reaction, run out the door, try something different, and then realize, gosh, this wasn't the right fit. So is this just a passing phase? Have you not felt this way for that long? And could it be related, let's just say, to the client that you're working with right now? Or could it be related to a new team member and you're still getting your sea legs working with them? Or a specific project that you're working on right now that might not be your favorite? So don't just knee jerk react. Ask yourself carefully, is this just a passing phase? Or have I been feeling this way for a long enough time that I really need to do something differently? All right, so let's look at our agenda for today. So the QR code for the slides is at the bottom as well as in the chat box. We're going to talk about why being in the right fit is important in the first place, why it impacts so much about our lives as well as our personal and professional lives. We're going to have you do a quick quiz, and we will poll you at the end of that to find out if you think it's time to make a move or not. There's 8 red flags to be considering. We'll discuss why we feel as coaches considering fulfillment first is a really important piece to knowing if you're in the right place or not. We'll discuss our ideal career model and how you can use that as a checklist for yourself to assess what's going on, whether to make a move and how big of a change you may need to make. And just by the way, so we will have Q&A at the end today, but I really love it when people interact throughout. So do me a favor, and if you could locate the Q&A box as well, please put questions in there that you have or that come to you as we're talking today. I'm happy to stop and answer. And if you have any resources that you'd like to share, or we'd love to hear your action steps or suggestions, please put those in the chat box because I'll acknowledge those as well. So more thoughts and questions, the better, bottom line. So let's talk about why this subject in general is important. Our goal is to not be like the man on this slide, right? And we want people to be in the right fit with their jobs. Now, I'm not saying that things are going to be perfect all day long. I'm also not saying that we know that you can just control your schedule and do what you want to do. You have a boss, they have objectives, goals for you, etc. But you can find or be in a position work-wise that really does light you up, make you feel fulfilled, use your strengths effectively, be the right work environment, all this other good stuff, more so than you actually may think. And when we look at the studies out there, still only 51%, for example, according to the Gallup organization, of people out there aren't fully engaged at work. And we know from everything going on this year that this is happening for a lot more people because things have changed with layoffs at their organization. And even if they weren't laid off, it's scary to think that could happen to you. And it's affected the work environment and culture in different places as well. And the second thing on this slide is that we all know too that stress takes a toll when it's at work, it bleeds into our personal life. And when you are not in the right fit professionally, you are twice as likely to feel like just bummed out, whether it's severe depression or just feel like you're not using your strengths, etc. It's just a really important topic. And we find that every few years, these studies come out and not enough people are engaged at work and in the right fit. So let's take a look first at the right-hand side of this slide, because I want you to know, like, as part of these statistics that I just shared, that if you're here and because you're here, you're not alone. This is happening to a lot of people, kind of regardless of the economy and everything else. A lot of people don't feel like they're in quite the right fit. And there's a lot of reasons that we get stuck, and it's normal and it happens. So, for example, one of the things to actually think about and ask yourself is, okay, why am I in my profession? And is it the right reasons? So we get stuck in jobs that don't fit for us, sometimes because we're good at it. It might not be rewarding anymore for us, or we might not enjoy it, but we're good at it. So we're like, okay, I'm getting a paycheck, I'll just stay, right? I should just be happy that I have a job. Sometimes our clients will tell us, the second bullet point here on the right, that other people told us this was a good career and we decided, okay, that's what I'll do, or try it out. We had a woman come to us, and when we asked her why she was a lawyer, she said, oh, well, all my family, they're doctors and lawyers. That's what we do. And we were like, okay, it's not really the exact reason that we want you to choose something, but it happens. Sometimes people will say it was offered. I had to pay my graduate school bills, or just we all have to pay our bills. And sometimes we just need to get something, and I get that. Some people will say it seems like with salary, they keep giving us just enough more money or benefits or etc. And some people feel stuck because of the golden handcuffs, where they've got such a good like salary and benefits package, even if, for example, they don't like what they do, they feel like, gosh, I can't leave. It's so good for that reason. And some people, understandably, they make a change too quickly. That's why we're here today, so that you don't do that and you're mindful about making a shift or not. And then some people, through no fault of their own, the job was not as advertised. I can't tell you how many times we hear this from people. So think about first also for yourself, am I stuck in my position for one of these reasons? And to go a little bit deeper, looking at the left-hand side of this slide, ask yourself and write it down for a few minutes tonight before you go to bed, or, over your break later on, whatever makes sense. But are you in your current job for the right reasons or the wrong reasons? And I find that even though this is a really simple, kind of straightforward question, sometimes when we take a few minutes to actually write it down and get it out of our head and on paper, we sometimes realize, ooh, are these really the reasons why I want to be in a position or a job? Or do I need to shift that up a little bit? Are you being mindful and intentional about your career path? The second thing about why this is important, but also part of what I want to say here, is that a lot of our clients, when they first come to us, understandably, they are pretty frustrated or, disappointed with their career path, bummed out, whatever the emotional state is. And because of that, most of the time they will think, gosh, I have to go try something completely different. We had a client once, for example, who was working at one of the big four consulting firms, successful, liked certain elements of her job. But because she was pretty unhappy with the majority of it, she literally said to us, sometimes I think I should just go be a chef, something completely different. And while there's nothing wrong with that, at the end of the day, when we picked it apart with her through coaching, she realized, you know what? At the end of the day, this is really about my boss. I like the other people that I work with. I like our clients and customers to a certain extent, but the culture within my department is just so toxic in so many ways. And she also discovered that she was actually using her strengths in the right way. She was doing tasks, or would have been doing tasks, that would have been fulfilling for her had it not been her boss. So, what we want to say for this slide, if you take a look at this, is to know, please, that you don't always have to make some huge dramatic change in order to be in the right fit. Sometimes it's a course correction or a shift. So one of the other things that you want to ask yourself is like, how dramatic of a change is needed? Do I need to just make changes in my current role? And that's going to help. Or, for example, if you're somewhat satisfied on this slide, Is it not enough to make changes in your current role, but maybe it needs to be a new role, but within your organization or something adjacent? Or it could be that you stay in your industry and your role, but you're performing that role at a different company or organization. So these subtle shifts can sometimes be the exact right thing. Don't assume it has to be dramatic. If you are highly, highly unsatisfied, it may be the case that you really do need to make a move and change. And it's not going to be as easy as possible, perhaps, to make adjustments where you are. And it may be the case that you may need to make a little bit of a larger shift. But we want to help you today evaluate what the case is and how to know not just if it's time to go, but also what kind of change you might need to make. Because as we all know and can imagine, making a smaller shift is a lot easier. We don't want you to have to do something huge if it's not necessary. Now, here's the good news. That was all the bad news, tough stuff. The good news is, as I said earlier on, you can find something that you are more engaged in and fulfilled by than you can imagine. We love getting emails from clients saying, I got this brand new job, or I made this shift, or I got a promotion, and I'm so happy. This is exactly what I wanted. And like we said earlier, it's usually less dramatic of a change than you think you need. But I want you to know that it is possible to have a strong sense of satisfaction from what you do. Now, is it going to be perfect all day long? Absolutely not. So when we look at this slide, I want to kind of give you the right perspective that we recommend, at least, about how to be or get into the right fit, but also be realistic at the same time. Because you're not going to ever, I mean, there's probably a few out there, have a job where every single thing is perfect every single second of the day, right? There's people involved. There might be politics at work that you're not a huge fan of. There might be a team member that you have a little bit more difficulty with. And we know that a lot of people have heard this saying on here, this quote on the right-hand side, do what you love and the money will follow. I do agree with that to a certain extent. What I will say about this is, yes, if you do something that you love, it won't feel like work quite as much. It will feel like it's something that you enjoy. And it's not like hard work, if you will, all the time. But I disagree with the money will follow. I had to work very hard to get to where I am today. So it's not just like it followed and fell in my lap. So it's not always going to be perfection, and it does take work to get here. Here's what we're going for. The right perspective that we suggest to people is on the bottom right of this slide. You are looking for a position or job that the good parts about it so far outweigh those bad parts, those things you don't like quite as much, that you barely notice those. And you can deal with those parts that aren't quite perfect because the rest of it is a really good fit for you. I love what I do. Are there days where I'd rather stay in bed and be independently wealthy? Heck yeah, of course. That's how we are, right? But at the end of the day, the things that I might not enjoy quite as much, I can handle those because they're a little bit fewer and far between. I can get some help with them in some cases. And the majority of the time, I'm spending doing something that I truly enjoy. Okay. So let's move to this next slide, but we've got a question that came through. I want you to get out your pen and paper here to get ready for our 8 red flags that will start in just a second. And someone is asking, how do you recommend putting yourself out there to explore new opportunities without your employer catching on to what's happening? Right. On LinkedIn, you've got 2 choices to notify employers and recruiters or the general public that you're open to work. You can select, when you do the open to work button and you go there on your LinkedIn profile, there are 2 choices. You can make it public where there's that banner on your headshot, but there's also that option where you don't do that. where you're notifying employers and recruiters in the background, where they might find you if they're searching for someone like you. Employers and recruiters have an app where they can pay for an account that is LinkedIn recruiting, and they will still find you, but your current employer would not know because it's not public there on your profile. And we recommend, by the way, doing this where you put yourself out there a little bit. Maybe it, like we call it, like a soft launch um, of a job search where you may not be sure if you're going to make a move now, later, or at all, but you want to explore some options. So you can turn that on. You can do some networking. This is where your alumni association comes in really handy because fellow TCU alum are much more likely to get back to you to talk with you about what their job is like, how to get your foot in the door, and all of that other good stuff. And I'll just let you all know that this is a good thing to do, I think, across the board, because there are so many different types of jobs out there that you and I don't even know exist. That if you haven't looked in a while, you don't even know that they're there. And we have had some people, just by the way, go on interviews and they decide sometimes to stay put because they're like, you know what? It's not that much better out there than I thought it might be. So we like when people put themselves out there just to kind of test the waters, if you will. So let's start on our 8 red flags, and we'll start getting to these other questions that are coming through too. Thank you for putting those in there. That's so great. So to know if you are definitely in the wrong fit, we'll give you kind of the summary of your responses and what they mean in just a moment. But we want you to write down, okay, how many kind of check marks do you have? So for the first 4, if you are, like I said earlier, dreading getting out of bed, not just every once in a while or maybe once a week or something, but it's like every morning, that's not a good sign. It's an extreme case, for example, of the Sunday night blues. Are not saying that you're going to like be excited to go to work every single second of the day or every single day, but you should like look forward to it most of the time, at least to a certain extent. Number 2, your work relationships and performance are suffering. If this is the case for you, where your relationships just are kind of going downhill, you're just not into it, and your work performance is suffering, and it's not just a short-term case of senioritis like my teenage son has, then there's a big problem. The third red flag is if you get no satisfaction, no joy, no sense of accomplishment out of your work, not a good sign. It's time to make a change. You need to at least get some of that some of the time, ideally the majority of the time. And number 4, if you've really started to slack off and have little or no motivation, that is a huge red flag and a really big problem. So those are our first 4. Okay. We'll show you the next 4 in just a second. Let me answer these questions. Another attendee is saying, working at the same company for 7 years. First 5 years, loved all the roles I was in, but then asked to rotate into a more strategic role, not enjoying it quite as much. It's been a good experience. Yeah, we always, learn something new, a good challenge at the beginning, but you should not stay in something that's not a fit for you if you're not enjoying it. How can I figure out if it's just my current role impacting my motivation or if it's time to change companies? So I would take a look at in the next couple of slides our ideal career model and write down an action step to get the slides, download the model, because that's going to help you understand what's really going on. Um, Most likely, because you have enjoyed the other roles at your organization, most likely it's the role that you're in. Because if you didn't enjoy those before, it could have been not just about the role, but maybe about the culture, etc. So, as a starting point, that's what I would consider. But use our model to understand what's really going on and how much of it, the dissatisfaction, has to do with, for example, and you can make a list and say, what are the things I'm not liking right now, for example? And if the majority of those things have to do with the role that you're in versus I don't like my coworkers. I don't like my boss. I don't like the culture or other external things that are not role specific, that's going to give you some answers too. It's a great question. Um, a next question that came through, how can you navigate to other industries when you only have specific education and credentials and where you feel stuck? So the first thing I would do, and then we'll look at these next red flags, is identify what you want to do next, ideally. So forget this education and credentials at the very beginning. I'm not saying don't be practical, but think about in an ideal world what you'd like to have job wise and get specific about your target. Because what if, for example, you would have transferable skills for some of those things or some things that would be related? Or what if you could take a class or get a certification? So when you have specific credentials, experience, education, you need to say to yourself, let me look at what I want to do next. And can I be qualified for those things using transferable skills or doing something in the meantime to kind of fill that gap? Or is that going to be unrealistic for me? So it's identifying the long term first and then figuring out the plan along the way and seeing if, okay, is there something similar or related to this that could be a little bit more realistic for me? It's a great question. So let's do the rest of the 8 red flags, and then we're going to do a poll here on the next slide in just a couple minutes. So red flag number 5, and this is a really big one. If you feel like you have to, especially, become someone else at work to fit in, to be part of the culture, to be effective, that's exhausting and it's not a good sign. Now, we are not saying don't like ditch your your professional persona. Like we don't go to work and air all of our baggage and share everything personal, right? That's just not the way to go. But if you have to feel like you have to kind of turn yourself into a pretzel and be something else or be someone different, and you can't allow at least some of your personality to show at work, you're not going to last there in the long run. Number 6 is if your job does not make use of your talents, skills, and strengths. This is directly related to not just being successful and effective at your job, but also being fulfilled. Studies show that when you're not leveraging your strengths in your work, you're not going to be fulfilled either because you're going to feel like there's certain things that you can do that are, for example, going to waste. And number 7 and 8, if you spend most of your time complaining about your job versus not really talking about it at all or talking about some things that are positive and exciting for you. And I know number 8 may sound weird if you fantasize in some way about quitting, being fired, or let go. This may sound crazy because no one wants to be fired or let go in an ideal world, right? But we had a client once, she's just one really good example. Excuse me, sorry. Okay. Who we she had had a coaching session with one of our coaches the week before. And the following week, they got on the phone with her. And in the first few seconds, she sounded really good. And they were like, you sound really good today. What happened? And she was like, I got fired. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me because she was really struggling with making a move and not like just quitting the job in the first place. She had this sense of loyalty, all this other stuff going on. So it actually, in some cases for people, and we're not saying go quit your job today because we need you to pay your bills, but in some cases for people, they need that nudge or push in order to move on. Before we get to our results in our poll really quickly, if you decide or if you're unsure if it's time to make a move and have more questions about what we're talking about today and feel like you need some additional help, just a quick reminder, we always do a free consult to learn more about our services and if it's the right thing for you at this time or not. Happy to schedule that with you. You can use the QR code, and I'm also going to put it in the chat box right now as well. Please do, if you schedule this with us, reference you came from TCU because we do give a discount for alum. So let's take a look at your results. Okay, so hopefully you wrote them down. I forgot to remind you with the second set of them. If you've got 1 to 2 red flags, you may just be going through a rough patch. You might just want to evaluate things in about 3 months. So I'm not saying ignore this. See if you can make some changes related to our career model, which we'll show you in a moment, to help you feel a little bit better and see if that makes enough of a difference. If you have 3 or 4 red flags, you're probably not in the right career, but you may be closer to your ideal than you think. Do me a favor and write down what works at your current position and what doesn't work to get started on what's really going on and evaluate objectively, like, oh, a lot of the things I'm saying here that I like or don't like are related to my boss, or they're related to the tasks that I'm performing. So you want to look at those themes when you do this exercise. And if you've got 5 or more red flags, definitely time to make a change. So this is how you kind of assess your results. And we've got our poll pulled up, and I'd love to give you a moment here to let us know if you think it's time to go or not. And we understand if you're still not sure. That's why you're here. That's okay. But just give us kind of from the red flag test and maybe what your gut instinct is so far. And we'll share those results in just a moment. Usually, I'll be honest with you, most people say that it is, and that's why they're here in the first place, and that's fair. So go ahead and let us know what those are for you. Okay. So this is actually interesting because it is a little bit different than what we normally find. Thank you for letting us know and being honest about it too. So it's good that we've got, I think, fewer people saying they want to make a change, but that doesn't mean anything bad at all. You can make a career transition. This is what we help people with all day, and it's totally possible, I promise. And enough people are saying it may not be time to make a move. So, as we're talking, as we continue with our advice today, when you're thinking about this, if right now is not the right time, or and maybe never, or maybe it's going to be a little bit later, we still want you to use these tools that we're talking about so that you can figure out what changes you can make immediately to help things get a little bit better. So we want to talk about fulfillment here for just a moment, because what we find in coaching our clients is that a lot of the time for people, there's some lack of fulfillment for them in their work, whether they define that as this job, isn't like using the best, all of my strengths. It's using some of them, but not all of them, for example. I like my tasks or my role maybe, but I feel like I'm helping the wrong company or the wrong people. In some cases, it could be my supervisor, like someone is just sharing in the chat. Thank you for sharing that. And it's like, okay, what do I do about that? Can't fire that person. You get the gist. So we actually, to assess what's going on for you and what may not be working, but also if there are ways to beef up this sense of fulfillment a little bit more where you are now as a starting point, but then also to say, okay, do I need to make a move in order to get more of this sense of fulfillment? We like for people to start with fulfillment at the very beginning of the process. And the reason is because it influences almost everything else in our lives, but in our model, which we'll show you on the next slide as well. We also find that it's directly related to different things. So, for example, if you're not making the salary that you want to be making, you're not going to be fulfilled. And we find too that most people want to have some sense of fulfillment in their work. They may not say, oh, I have to be passionate about what I do all day, every day, but you want to go home with some sense of accomplishment. So, we would also suggest when you're looking at our model on the next slide, starting out with fulfillment first. And the ways to start to define this are listed on this slide. Defining success. What does success mean to you? And journaling about that later on for like 5 minutes. And are those elements of what success means to you present in your current job? Can you make them present in your current job? Or do you need to make a shift in order to make that happen? Another way to identify your fulfillment or what you want in terms of fulfillment in your job is to identify those interests that you have. What are the things I've done personally, but also work-wise, where I've lost track of time? And am I doing enough of that kind of stuff in my job? Can I implement that where I am now? We have some clients, they will journal about their ideal day at work and what qualities it would have. And some of our clients will create a career vision board. We've got a great tool for doing that that's free on our website. And then finally, the first thing that we do with almost all of our clients um, is help them identify their top 3 to 5 career values. Are their values being honored in their work environment, in the tasks that they're performing? Are their values present at least some way, shape, or form within their team, et cetera, et cetera? So these are things we want you to think about at the beginning, because what we find is even if other things aren't quite perfect in your job, if you've got some of this fulfillment, it can help you move the needle in the right direction. So 2 questions in the Q&A, and you can start taking a look at our model here on the slide while we're doing this. One person is saying, I don't have more than 2 flags, but I'm keeping my job because it's flexible and enables me to do a part-time job that I love. It makes me very happy, even though it doesn't pay the bills. So I totally support that. From experience, I know that my full-time job is dreadful, but what makes it okay is that I gain the trust from my employer, excuse me, to have that flexibility. Any thoughts? How can I make a decision to move on when the main decision is flexibility? Which I only get from working a couple of years. So here's what I would say is 2 things to think about is number one, if your main priority for your full-time job that pays the bills really is flexibility, because let's just say if your part-time job could become something that's like full-time in some way, shape, or form, that would be ideal, right? Because you enjoy it so much. If there's a way to make that happen and pay your bills, I would at least consider that to see if that's a possibility. But if for whatever reason it's not and never going to be feasible for you to do that, I would try to stay where you are, keep that flexibility. If you feel like you need to try to find something else that's flexible, there are great websites out there that like remote.co and flexjobs.com that advertise. Those are job boards for more flexible jobs. You could check those out, but those are the different things that I would be considering right now. And then also, I would also think about, okay, what is it you love about your part-time job? And are there ways to infuse some of those either types of tasks or some things in your full-time job? And if not, you may say, I'm just going to keep them separate. It's a great question, though. Another person is asking, I'm in a field I enjoy and find fulfilling, but the pay is well below market. What steps can I take to better align financial stability with fulfillment, whether it's through negotiation, pivoting roles, or building new skills? Great question. I always want you to look in your own backyard first. So I would talk with your employer if this is an okay time to do so. If they're like, there's a hiring freeze and things are kind of tough right now, you may want to wait till whenever your performance review is or whatever. But I would definitely start with where you are and find out how you can get it up to market rate as soon as possible. It may not be immediate. Maybe there's a longer term plan they can implement. But try that first because you never know what they're going to say. Are there things they could give you benefits wise or something else that could help kind of make up the difference as well? Then, if that is a no and doesn't get you to where you needed to be, then I would definitely consider pivoting roles. It sounds like you don't have to make a move right away because you are enjoying it. So then you might say to yourself, okay, what are the other organizations that are here locally or even remote work that are similar to this, but that are going to pay more? Is it moving from public industry, public sector to private industry or something different like that? And then the person in the chat box about, I'm in my 50s, I don't know if it's feasible to do something different. We work with clients all the time in their 50s. More and more people are working later in life for lots of different reasons. We're, living longer, all that other good stuff. And it is possible to make a change. It doesn't mean it's going to happen overnight. It can take a little bit longer. And it does depend on like what kind of change you want to make, how dramatic of a change it is. But that's what we do all day with people. So please know it is feasible. So let's take a look at this career model because what we find is that It helps you be more objective about what's going on, what's working and what's not working in your job. And if you review each piece kind of step by step, it can help you understand, okay, how big of a change do I need to make? What changes can I make where I am? All that other good stuff. So use it as a checklist. So I'll explain the pieces here. I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but just to be sure, we talked about fulfillment already. Are your values being honored in some way, shape, or form? Do you get some sense of reward or satisfaction from what you do? You also need to have fulfillment come a little bit from the work environment, meaning you enjoy working with the people that you work with, at least to a certain extent, etc. We then want you to go to the left and look at your interests. Like, are the tasks that you're performing for the most part all day, every day, again, not perfection, interesting and appealing to you? So are you like intrinsically motivated, not just motivated, but like interested in the work that you do and the people that you work with, whether it's clients or team members? In terms of strengths, are you leveraging your strengths in the way that you want to? Remember, this one is very much related to fulfillment over here. And if people don't feel like they're using all of their strengths at their current job, whether it's a different percentage for each of those strengths, um, they're not going to be fulfilled and it's not going to work. So you want to understand what your strengths are, do a strengths finder assessment, for example. That's what we use with our clients. Interview other people about what your strengths are and identify and say, okay, am I using these and enough in my current position? And if I'm not, can I make changes here or do I need to move on? The next two things we want you to look at up here are your experience in education. And the questions here are, am I using my past experience in a way that I want to? Or do I want to do something different and use those transferable skills, strengths, et cetera, in a new way? And also same with education. And one of the things I want to say here too is these three pieces of the model, strengths, experience, and education, can also help you brainstorm alternative career paths and alternative ideas that could be a good fit for you. And this is where we want you to kind of poke around and look at what else is out there for you. The reason why these three are also important is because it helps you be realistic about your next steps. Am I going to be qualified for these things? And if I'm not quite qualified, can I take a class? Can I get certified? Can I gain experience where I am now or do some freelance or volunteer work to gain that experience? The last three, last but absolutely not least, is personality type, environment, and compensation. You need to be in a role and in a work environment where you're allowed to be yourself, like we talked about earlier, but that also fits with your personality traits. If you're more introverted, you can't be in an extroverted job. You're going to be exhausted and vice versa. If you are more of a big picture kind of strategic thinker and you are being forced in your current job to just work on details all day, every day, it's not going to work. So you need to consider those personality traits, especially because those are not going to change. You can go back to take a class, you can enhance some of your strengths, etc., but you're not going to change from introverted to extroverted or vice versa, for example. Work environment is critically important. We have so many people come to us and they discover that it's really about the work environment for me. It's not the actual job I'm doing. I need to do something similar or related, but at a different place. And then compensation is critically important too. We need to pay our bills, have the right benefits, etc. So use this as a checklist to help you identify if you need to make a move. Sorry, I'm trying to move my mouse around too much here. If you need to make a move, what kind of move it needs to be, what gaps or pieces of the puzzle need to be filled, or if you can make some of these changes to fulfill or fill in this model a little bit more where you are. We've got a couple of things that I wanted to share programming wise with you. Our ideal career course is built around our career model. Our clients love it. It's interactive, it has videos, but it explains to you how to go through this exact process that we're talking about today, step by step, and figure out, okay, am I in the right place? What do I need to do to make things a little bit different? Where I am, if that's the first thing that I'm going to try to do. And if not, knowing after that, okay, what the right fit is for me, what kind of change I need to make. I put a link to this in the chat box, and the QR code is also here too. So, one of or two other quick things before we move to our more formal Q&A at the end here is one of the things that can be helpful with you figuring out if it's time to go or not is you can try a couple of career assessments. And we're actually curious. This is our second and our last poll for today, Diana. When you get a second, it's not a rush. If we could launch that poll, that'd be great. Assessments can be helpful. Here's why, because they give you accurate information in a short period of time. But you also need to realize that they're not the end all be all. In any type of career assessment or Myers-Briggs, StrengthsFinder, DISC assessment, those are really, really helpful because they give you accurate information. But remember, they only cover one of the pieces of our model. So, for example, they might be telling you about your personality type or your strengths. But if you do something like that, and let's say it spits out, you should be like a funeral director or a circus clown, and you're like, I don't want to do either of those things. This is what happens. It's telling you that you could be good at something or you might have an interest in it, but it's not considering salary and it's not considering some of these other things. So please know that they can be really helpful and useful, but it's one piece of the puzzle and you need to look at everything else with it too. So take our poll if you would. And one person is asking, I've heard one of the only ways to get an increase in salary is to get a new job elsewhere because of starting at the current market rate, whereas the current employer may only do a certain percent of raises, excuse me. How do we communicate to our employer that you don't want to leave, but they might be forcing your hand because of that? I would say, I think this is a great question. And if they say no, in some cases, that is the only way, but I would always ask them first. So I think that that's good. I would be letting them know in a nice, kind of productive way. I'd like to talk about my compensation structure. I realize that, there might be ABC going on with our organization. But I am aware that, and like maybe based on do some research, do some homework before you have this conversation so you know kind of where you land. But let them know that you would like to ask for an increase because of A, B, C. And you can literally say to them, like, I really would like to stay here. This is, the place I'd like to be, but it's becoming a little bit of a make or break for me. So I need to have this conversation and I'd like to have it in, direct, open, honest way. Can we have that discussion? So something like that, where it's letting them know you're kind of at the end of your rope, so to speak, but in a professional, non-threatening way. Let's go ahead and look at our career assessment poll and see how many people have before. So 36% have. Okay, so I'm glad some people have tried it. There are more and more out there now, and there's more and more assessments that you can try out for free on the internet as well. So I would recommend for those people that haven't, that 64%, this could be something as an action step that you want to write down for yourself as something that you may want to look at because it can help you get a sense of where things fall for you. And some of the other options before we get to Q&A, and we've got another program through TCU that we're doing. On the next slide, I want to let you know about some of the things to be thinking about is if you feel like it's time to make a move, but this is not a good time to do it, make sure that you're reading the room and not just going into a negotiation or a job search blindly, not knowing what's going on within that industry with your local economy, whatever it is. And the other thing that you can think about in some cases is right now may not be the right time for you to make a move. And if that's the case, for example, are there other things that you would be happy with if you can't make a change? More flex time, like remote work, a title change, a bonus, something like that. Remember that there are multiple things that you can consider asking for or changes to where you currently are that could make the difference, at least for a while, maybe another year or so. So go ahead, and what I'd like to do next is as we get to our Q&A, I'd love it if people would start putting into the chat what their action steps are, because we'd love to hear those. I wanted to let you know about a boot camp that we are doing through TCU that is for job search purposes. It's coming up in September. The QR code is here, and I will put a link to it in the chat box as well. This is a boot camp that has become that much more important and popular this year, given everything that's going on with the economy and all of that. So we've had these being filled the whole year. Um, I lead the boot camps. They are 3 sessions. They are live webinars with me. So I'm on there. They're interactive. You can ask questions just like you did today, and I will answer all of the questions. There's a lot of good materials, resume templates, LinkedIn templates, a lot of good stuff that show you how to get in front of employers, get past those scanning systems that I know we're all kind of freaked out about, how to leverage LinkedIn proactively because there's tools on there like I'm hiring and who's viewed your profile, things that we want you to be doing that can help you be more effective in your search. And it helps you prepare for interviews and a ton more. I'm running one right now, and we get 5-star reviews for these. They love this program. I love what I do, and I give a lot of helpful information during the course of these. So feel free to check this out. Ask me any questions if you have any. We'd love to hear action steps and any other questions before we go. So some of your action steps might be, I'm going to review the model and use that as a checklist. You might be saying, I'm going to kind of brainstorm ideas, like one person who shared with us about just kind of poking around on LinkedIn and saying, I'm open to work and seeing what else comes your way to see if it's any better or not. So go ahead and let's write those down and share those in the chat with us if you would. And then also, if you have any other questions, please feel free to share those too. I'm actually going to put my email address, oops, in the chat box because sometimes I'm more introverted actually than extroverted. I can pose as an extrovert to do these, and I love them. But I think of questions typically later on after the fact. So if you do have questions you want to ask later, feel free to send me an email too. And Diana, as we're waiting for if there are any other questions and action steps that people want to share, and we've got one that just came through, any announcements or anything that you want to say as we're waiting and before we go?
Yes, well, first I got 3 questions sent to me directly. So someone is asking what the coaching experience is like working with you all.
Sure. Oops, and I went to the next slide by accident. Sorry about that. So we have different programs. We've got our boot camps that are group sessions. We have a smaller group session for ongoing coaching as well. A lot of people will sign up for our one-on-one coaching where they will purchase a certain number of sessions. They're 55 minutes. And basically you talk with your coach about your goals. We give you action steps, use our different models that we have to not just clarify those goals, but help you get like know what the action steps are that you need to take to make those happen. And you will talk with us once a week, once every other week, once a month, whatever cadence works for you. We always make sure that you have notes from our sessions, and we've got a lot of great materials too. Our coaches are awesome.
Thank you. And another question, how much time should I spend on defining my career values?
Yes. So, in terms of career values, it does take a few minutes. So, if you are the type of person, or if you've already identified your values before, this may be that you just need to update them and kind of make some adjustments. But I would give yourself, honestly, at least like 2 or 3 weeks, not because it's going to take that whole time to figure it out every single second, obviously, but values are these intangible things that are critically important, but a little bit more esoteric and sometimes harder for people to define. So I would start on it and maybe even have like a notepad on your desk or something at home where you reflect on and think about and refine your values over time, because it usually does take some reflection or self-reflection in order to know what they are, but then also to understand how you define them and how you can incorporate them into your career a little bit more. So give yourself a few weeks to be realistic. And we've got another person who shared their action step, writing down the reasons I've been staying in my current role. I love that one. Career vision board resource. I will actually put that here in the chat box while we are talking about it. It is on this page, and people like this kind of a creative, fun exercise. But we find that when people create something that's kind of visual for them to latch on to, that helps them understand what they want to be different as well too. So I put that in the chat box just now too.
Okay. And then last question, what if I'm not sure what my values are after doing the peak experience exercise?
Yeah, so we do, that's a good one. And I referenced this on the slide, but I didn't talk about it as much. So we have our clients do what we call a peak experience exercise, where they're thinking about peak moments in their life and in their career when they were like rocking and rolling and they were really enjoying what they were doing. And that can help them start to identify what some of their values are based on what was cool about that experience for them. If you're having trouble with it, though, you could ask close friends and family members to kind of brainstorm ideas with you. And in some cases, we have actually had people like use AI to brainstorm what some of their values might be. If I'm in this type of role, for example, and I enjoy it, what are some of my possible values? So you can do that as well. We like the self-reflective exercise first because we're pulling things out of you, but those are, other ways to kind of think about it as well. Thanks, Diana, for bringing those up.
I think that's it from me. I will do a little plug for Terrence Hood. He works in the Career Center. He also helps with alumni and their job search. So, Hallie's a great resource. Terrence is also a great resource. I'll send his information in the chat. But Hallie, thank you again for another wonderful webinar session. This will be super helpful for everybody that just wants to know when to go. Um, and we'll be sending out a follow-up email with a recording of today's session. We appreciate your time and thank you again, Hallie. We look forward to seeing you all again soon. Go Frogs.
Thanks. Good luck, everybody.